The evening sun painted the quiet suburban street in shades of gold as Officer Daniel Hayes tightened the leash around his canine partner, Max. The German Shepherd sat obediently beside him, his intelligent eyes scanning the park ahead. Daniel had worked with Max for 3 years, through storms, chases, and rescues. But tonight, neither of them knew that something extraordinary was about to happen, something that would test not only the dog's training but the invisible bond between heart and instinct. Across the street, a little girl of about 7 sat alone on a swing. Her small hands gripped the rusted chains as she swayed gently, her eyes vacant and distant. Her name was Lily. Her long brown hair fell messily over her face, and her blue dress had a small tear near the hem. To anyone passing by, she might have looked like a child waiting for her parents. But Daniel's instincts told him something wasn't right. Max had already lifted his head, ears perked, nose twitching. Daniel slowed his pace, watching. There was a man sitting on a nearby bench, a large man in a dark hoodie, pretending to scroll through his phone. But every few seconds, his eyes darted to the girl. Something in his posture, something in the way Lily kept glancing at him with quiet fear, made Daniel's pulse quicken. He leaned closer to Max and whispered, "Stay alert, buddy." The dog let out a low, nearly inaudible growl, his gaze fixed on the man. Daniel began walking toward the swing set, trying to appear casual. Lily looked up as he approached, her lips trembling slightly. She didn't speak, but her eyes met Max's, and that was when it happened. She blinked twice, deliberately, her little face tightening as if pleading for someone to understand. Max stiffened. It was subtle, but unmistakable. The girl's breathing quickened, her hands gripped the swing tighter. Daniel had seen Max react this way only when he sensed fear or danger during hostage drills. The dog turned his head toward Daniel, then back to the man on the bench. His muscles were coiled like springs. Daniel didn't move, he let the moment breathe, watching both of them. Then the man suddenly stood up, stuffing his phone into his pocket. He started walking toward the girl, his face twisting into something ugly. Before Daniel could even issue a command, Max launched forward. The German Shepherd bounded across the playground, barking sharply, the sound echoing through the park like thunder. The man froze, startled, his hands halfway extended toward the girl. Max stopped just a few feet away, baring his teeth, ready to attack if needed. Daniel ran in behind him, shouting, "Police! Step away from the child." The man's face turned pale. He hesitated, then bolted in the opposite direction. Max lunged, expertly tripping him with a snarl and pinning him to the ground until Daniel caught up and handcuffed him. As the man lay cursing on the pavement, Daniel turned to the little girl. She hadn't moved from the swing. Her eyes were wide, her lower lip trembling. "It's okay now," Daniel said softly, kneeling down beside her. "You're safe." Lily didn't speak, but tears began to slide down her cheeks. Max padded over and sat beside her, his head tilted gently, his body relaxed now. She hesitated before reaching out and placing her tiny hand on his fur. "Good boy," Daniel murmured, watching the strange calm that spread across her face. A few minutes later, backup arrived, and the man was taken into custody. They discovered he was a wanted suspect in several child abduction cases across nearby states. But the moment that stayed with Daniel wasn't the arrest, it was the silent signal that only Max had understood. Later that night, at the station, Daniel learned that Lily was nonverbal. She hadn't spoken since her mother's passing 2 years earlier. She communicated mostly through gestures and blinking patterns her therapist had taught her. Her father had reported her missing just an hour before the park incident. Daniel sat in the hallway, stunned. Max rested his head on Daniel's knee, calm as always, but his eyes held something deep, something that words couldn't capture. When Lily's father arrived, he rushed into the room and scooped her into his arms, crying uncontrollably. Lily hugged him back, still silent but clearly relieved. Max wagged his tail gently, as if he understood the weight of the moment. The next morning, the story made headlines: "Police dog saves missing girl after silent signal." Reporters surrounded the station, eager for interviews, but Daniel declined most of them. He wasn't interested in glory. He knew who the real hero was. A week later, Daniel received a letter. It was from Lily's father. Inside was a small drawing, crayon on paper, of a brown and black dog standing beside a little girl. Beneath it, written in shaky letters, were 4 words: "He heard my eyes." Daniel felt something catch in his throat. He placed the drawing on his desk beside Max's badge tag. The world was loud, full of chaos and noise, but sometimes, the purest cry for help came in silence, and only a heart like Max's could hear it. Months passed, but that night in the park remained vivid. Max was honored at a local ceremony where children patted his fur and took photos with him. Lily was there too, holding her father's hand. She still didn't speak much, but when she saw Max, her entire face lit up. She ran toward him and hugged him tightly around the neck. "Thank you," she whispered softly, for the first time in months. Daniel froze. It was faint, almost uncertain, but it was a voice. Lily's father broke into tears. Max wagged his tail furiously, licking her face as if answering her. The entire crowd went silent for a moment, witnessing a miracle that no one could have predicted. After the ceremony, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel sat in his patrol car, staring at the small paw print metal pinned to Max's vest. He thought about all the moments he'd doubted his purpose, all the nights he'd wondered if the job was worth the weight it carried. But that day had reminded him why he'd joined the force in the first place, not for arrests or recognition, but for moments like this. For humanity, for hope. That night, before locking up the station, Daniel walked Max around the empty parking lot. The city lights shimmered in the distance. He crouched down, scratching behind Max's ears. "You knew before I did, didn't you?" he said with a smile. Max tilted his head, eyes gentle and knowing. Daniel sighed, his voice softer now. "Sometimes I think God speaks to us through the ones who can't talk back." Max gave a small bark, and Daniel laughed, feeling warmth spread through his chest. From that day on, every time Daniel looked into Max's eyes, he was reminded that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it blinks twice. And somewhere in a small house not far from that park, a little girl slept peacefully, clutching a stuffed German Shepherd toy her father had bought her. On her nightstand lay a photo of her and Max together, the moment her silence was finally understood, and the world became safe again. In that quiet picture, the story of trust, instinct, and love lived on, a story that needed no words, because sometimes, the heart speaks louder than anything else ever could.